Welcome back to my channel. If you're new, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button. Get my hair out of the way so we can get started. This is a long chapter and I have to go through it quickly, pages and pages. It is chapter 18 and it is his first confession. Now remember, the second confession is when they went to Wisconsin, the FBI and the CBI, and the third confession is the book. So it starts out how she's explaining that there's a lot of typos and grammar errors in this because she got it directly from the interviews word for word. And that the FBI started out by telling him after he failed the polygraph that they appreciated him coming in even though he knew he was going to fail. They also said that he needed to go ahead and get everything off his chest and to tell them everything that happened. And he said that everything he had told them was true. That then they told him that the most important thing they wanted to know about was what had happened to Shanann and the girls. And he replied, okay. And he told them that he had been holding a lie inside of him and that he would do anything to help them. And then he said, I know this, like, I'm not like trying to cover things up. And he said that he wanted his wife and children home. And then the agent told him that they weren't coming back home. And then he reiterated that he hoped that they were coming back home, but he did not know that they were coming back home. And the agents told him that they were confused and that they had had a lot of leads over the last few days. And Chris continued to say that he did not know where they were located. And he said that if he could have his wife and babies back, that he would, that he wanted them back, and he wanted everybody back. And that was the God's honest truth. And then the agent said that they couldn't understand why there were two Chris's. And then Chris said, okay, he cheated on her and that he wasn't proud of it and that she accused him of it and he had denied it and he felt horrible because she was pregnant, but he did not hurt her. That he cheated on her emotionally. He hurt her. That's the only way he hurt her, was emotionally. And he admitted that he did not go to the Rockies game, that for 5 weeks he had been spending it with her. He did not say her name. He just explained that he had fallen out of love with Shanann and fell into love with her. And they asked her what her name was, and he said he did not want to get her involved and he didn't want to ruin her life. He would take his children's life and his wife's life, but he didn't want to ruin his mistress' life. And he said that she was a wonderful person and that she knew he was married and that they were having issues, and he told her that they were getting separated. And he said that she took his breath away and that he never thought in a million years that this could happen. And he never felt like this for anyone in his entire life. And he told the agents that he didn't think, or the agents told him that they didn't think his girlfriend hurt anybody. And that they could just leave that alone and get back to it later. That they just wanted to find out where his wife and daughters were located. And again, Chris said he didn't know. And he said that the only thing he was holding back was the affair. And then the agent reminded him that he was never asked any questions about infidelity on that polygraph that he failed. So he wasn't failing for infidelity lying. He was failing for lying about the last time he saw Shanann and if he had anything to do with her disappearance. And so then the agents told him that they were worried about his wife and daughters. And he replied that he was concerned also, Chris did. And they said this should be one of the happiest times in a marriage because she's pregnant. And they did say that they felt that Shanann might be a little controlling and maybe she didn't listen and she could do whatever she wanted. And that they wanted to give him an opportunity to help and find Shanann and the girls. And Chris replied that he wanted to do whatever he could to help and that he didn't know where they were located. And then the agents reminded him that his father flew all the way in from North Carolina and he was waiting in the lobby. And they told Christopher that he was lying to his dad and everyone. And the agents pleaded with Chris to help them. And Chris replied that he wanted to help them. But then the agent said, let's talk about that night. And Chris agreed. And the agents told him that they have his Alexa and that they were programmed to record distress. Whether this is true or not, I do not know. But they also told him that they had all the text messages from him, Shanann, and Nikki. The agent asked him again about the evening and Chris reiterated again that he got up at 4 a.m. and Shanann woke up at 4:15 and they had that talk about separation. And the agent said, well, did you talk about Nikki? And I think that was the first time they had said her name. And he replied that Shanann had accused him of it, but he denied it. And she did ask him about that $68 charge for dinner. And she asked him if there were two people at the dinner. And he admitted that the charge came from the dinner to the officers, but he says he denied it to Shanann. That he could not bring himself to admit the affair to her. And that she started crying, and he told her that he wanted to separate. And then the agent asks him about selling the house, and Chris says that Shanann was the one that initiated it the week prior, and that they both knew that one person could not afford to live in the house if they separated, and that Shanann contacted the real estate agent, but then Chris called her on Monday after the murders, of course. On August 13th, he texted her and gave her instructions on what to do. So then the agent asked Chris to tell them about the pregnancy. And he said that Shanann was 80-20 when they discussed the pros and cons of having the third child. And when she got pregnant, she told all her friends that it was Chris's idea. And that Shanann told her friends that when she got pregnant that she was 70-30 against the pregnancy. And that confused him and he didn't know why she would say such a thing. And then the agent asked him if he realized what he was saying didn't make any sense. And he said he knew. And the agent said that he didn't understand how the girls and Shanann could just vanish off the face of the earth. And Chris said that he promised him that he had nothing to do with it, that he did nothing to those kids or her and then he changed it to, after he said, I did nothing to those kids or her, he added, to make them vanish. So then he told the agents that it was on video when he left in his truck. And he said he didn't load anything into his truck besides his tools or the container or his book bag or his water jug or lunchbox. So, wow. The agents asked him what happened next, and he said he drove out of his driveway. And then they asked, what happened to your wife and kids before you drove out of the driveway? And he said he didn't do anything to them, that they were still in the house. And the agent told him that his wife wasn't the type of person to just up and vanish. And then Chris agreed. And the agents asked him if it was an accident, and he said he didn't do anything. The agents asked if it was a misunderstanding. He said he had planned on taking it slow with Nikki to see if anything developed. And the agents told Christopher they had a hard time believing that he had an emotional conversation that morning because he hasn't shed one tear about his children over the last few days. And Chris said that he loved his girls and that didn't mean anything. Just because he hadn't shed tears didn't mean that he didn't love his girls or his wife. And they told him it just didn't make sense. And then the agent told him that the girls are no longer around to take care of, and that the loss of that should cause him pain. And he tried to tell them that he did feel pain, but it was not obvious. And that he wanted to get off his chest. The agents told him they wanted to see the guy who felt bad about his kids being missing and the guy that wanted to get things off his chest. And that the agent said they just wanted to make sure that the girls were not out in the middle of a field somewhere. And then she asked him if Shanann did something to the girls. And he said, no, I don't know. I have no clue. And then she asked, did Shanann do something to the girls? And then he said that Oh, and then she said, did Shanann do something to the girls and you felt like you had to do something to Shanann in return? And he said, no, they were at the house when I left. They were there. And then she told him that the only way they could have left was in his truck. And then Chris said there was no way because, I didn't just throw them in my truck. And then she reminded him that he had GPS installed in that truck and that it pinged every 10 seconds and that they were going to find out exactly where he went. And then the agent asked him at this point if they were not asking the right questions. And Chris said, yes, you're asking all the questions. He didn't say the right ones. He just said all the questions. And then Shanann, they asked if Shanann did something. And then he changed it here. He was adamant before that she didn't. But here you could see he's persuaded a little bit. And he says, I don't think she did anything to those kids. So now he doesn't think so. And then he said, there's no way. Next, she talked to Christopher about these cold cases of other parents that ended up killing their family members. And so this gave Chris an idea. And once they pointed to the photographs of Celeste and Bella, he started talking about the girls and the clothes they were wearing. And the agent asked him if he made sure that the girls were warm when he left the house. I think they were trying to trick him. And he said that they always were warm. So he was ready for that one. And then they asked if he was taking care of the girls in the very end. And he said that he's always taking care of the girls. So he didn't fall for those. And then she told him that she believed that he or Shanann had made a huge mistake and that they were getting worried that something did happen to all three of them. And the agent thought that maybe he done something to all three of them. And he said that he did not do anything to these girls. And the agent asked what Shanann did to the girls. And that is when Chris asked to talk to his dad. And the agent recommended that his dad be brought in because his dad was waiting out in the lobby and there was no way they could conduct that interview out there because there was lots of other people and it wasn't private. And they asked him, will you tell your dad what happened? And Chris just answered them by saying he had been in there for 5 or 6 hours and that he just wanted to talk to his dad. And then the agent asked him what he was going to tell his dad. And he said that he was going to tell him he loved him and he needed him by his side. And then she asked him to explain further. And Chris said that he talked to Shanann about the separation and the house. And Shanann asked about the affair. He said that mascara was running down her face and it was very emotional. And she asked him if he promised to tell everything to his dad. And he agreed. And she asked if it would be easier for his dad to tell them after he tells his dad. And he says he didn't know. And then she said that she believed that he was the kind of guy that needed to take responsibility. And the other agent said that he was worried that his dad would distract him. And Chris said, what do you mean by that? Distract me from talking to you guys? And then Chris said, I just need to talk to my dad. And then the two agents went out and got Ronnie in the lobby. And he was wearing a polo shirt that said Papa Ronnie right here. It was embroidered on there. And they explained that Christopher wanted to talk to him about what had happened. And they told him that everything was going to be visually recorded and audio recorded. And Ronnie was fine with that. And Ronnie was escorted into the room. And they told Ronnie and Chris that they had as much time as he needed. And Chris pointed to the recorder on the table. And he said, are you guys going to leave this here? And the agents told him yes. And then they shut the door for privacy, but it still had that key in there that they could get out. And Ronnie asked him if he was going to tell him about what was going on. And he told his dad he failed the polygraph. And they were not going to let him go. And then Ronnie asked if there was a reason they weren't going to let him go. And Chris said that the police knew about the affair. And Ronnie asked if he was going to tell him what happened. And Chris told him that him and Shanann had a conversation that morning and it was emotional. And he went downstairs. And then he said after that he didn't want to protect Shanann a few times. And then he said, but I don't know what to say. And then Ronnie asked what happened. And Chris replied, she hurt them. And then I freaked out on her. And then Ronnie said if that was when Shanann and the girls left. And Chris said, they were, and then Ronnie interrupts and said, talk to me and tell me what happened. And Chris whispered, she smothered them, and they were smothered. And Ronnie immediately said, they what? And Chris said, she strangled them. They were smothered. And Ronnie answered, she smothered them or choking them? And Chris replied by saying, I don't know. I didn't hear anything. When I was downstairs, I came back up and they were gone. I don't know. Me talking about her, about separation and everything. And that's how it's written, I promise. About, I don't know, what else to because I freaked out and I did the same thing to effing her. Those were my kids. And then Ronnie asked if Shanann freaked out about the separation when he was leaving for work. And Chris said that Shanann laid back down, but when he went downstairs, he heard that commotion and he didn't think much about it. But when he went back upstairs, Shanann was on top of Celeste, and Ronnie asked if she was choking Celeste and did Shanann kill Celeste. And he said they were blue. And Ronnie said both of them, and Chris said yes. And Ronnie asked if Shanann choked both of them to death. And Chris said, I freaked out and did the same effing thing to her. And Ronnie said, oh my God. And Chris said he didn't call the police about what happened. And Ronnie said, so then what'd you do? Haul the bodies off or something? And Christopher said he didn't know what else to do and that he freaked out. And then Ronnie reiterated that Shanann choked both Bella and Celeste to death and he lost it and choked Shanann. And Chris said, that's just, it's rage. And then he told his dad that he was sorry. And then Chris's dad said, I know you're sorry. And then he said that Shanann just lost it because he was cheating on her and he denied it. And Ronnie said, is that the point where she lost it? And then he said, it was the point when Shanann started crying. And then Chris asked his dad what was going to happen. And then Ronnie said, Shanann was upset because of the separation or the affair. And then Chris said that he believed the affair. And then Chris told his dad it was the last time he was going to see the light of day. And Ronnie said, we need to get you a good lawyer to see what the heck they can do. And then the agents came back in and they asked Christopher where Shanann and the girls were located now. And they wanted to get them out of the cold. And he said they're gone. There's no getting them back. And she asked where they were located and if it was at Survey 319, right off of the site. And she asked him to help her find the girls. And then he said that he did not know what to do and that none of it made sense and that he didn't know why she would hurt his effing girls. And then they asked him again, where the girls in the ground? And then they asked him if all three girls were at Survey 319. And that's when he said yes. And they asked him how he got the girls onto Survey 319. And he said he took them out there in his truck, that he put Shanann and the girls right behind his driver's seat. Remember, this was the first confession. And Ronnie asked the FBI to look at Shanann's Facebook page because 2 days ago she had posted a 5-foot doll lying on the couch completely covered with a sheet. And Ronnie said that he thought Shanann had planned the murders. Little did Ronnie know that Chris took that picture and sent it to Shanann in Arizona. And Shanann posted it because she thought it was a joke. But Chris was the one that planned the murders. Ronnie was right to have this insight. But it was your son that took that picture because he was planning the murders, not Shanann. And then the agents told Chris it was very important to know where he put the girls at the oil well site. And he said he didn't know what else to do. And then he said it again. He didn't know what else to do. He was so scared. It's like my wife just did this and I just did that. What do I do? Anything that I would do from this point was just going to be a freaking just insensitive, horrible thing. And the agent asked him to show them where the girls were located. And Chris said, what's going to happen? And they said that they were going to help get the girls out of there. And he asked him if he preferred a coworker to go out there. And Chris was like, oh, God, no, 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 because he didn't want anybody judging him or wondering why he didn't call the police. And so he agreed to show them where they were located on the site. As soon as they brought up bringing in his coworkers, he agreed to draw on the pictures where they were located. And so the agents step out of the room for a minute, and it's just Chris and Ronnie talking. And Christopher said that Mom always said Shanann was an unstable person, but he never believed in a million years that this could happen. So even here, he's blowing smoke up Cindy's head for saying all those things about Shanann, when he always sided with Shanann, so he obviously didn't think those things. It said earlier in the book that he always took Shanann's side, so whatever. He asked his dad why this happened to me, and why did this happen to those little girls? And Ronnie said he was sorry, and Ronnie told Chris that he would get him a lawyer. And he asked if Shanann killed both of the girls while they were sleeping. And Chris said, yep. And so maybe he killed them while they were sleeping, and there was a little bit of truth to this. And he said that he emotionally drove her to do something stupid. And Ronnie said it wasn't his fault to not blame himself. And then Ronnie said it was a crime of passion, but because he hid it, that was the thing that broke the camel's back. And Christopher said, had he told Cindy yet? And Ronnie said no. And then he told Ronnie that Shanann had a temper, that one minute she was okay and the next minute she was not. And Ronnie asked him what Shanann said that morning. And he said Shanann told him, F you, F you, F you. And Christopher said, I've ruined everyone's life, including our families and friends. And he asked Ronnie if he could call his foreman and let him know that they would be coming out to the oil site. And Ronnie asked him to describe where Shanann and the girls were instead of going out there. And then Ronnie asked about the babies. And Christopher said, that's what I feel horrible about. They're in the frickin' oil tank. I didn't know what else to do. Chris said, please, God, forgive me for everything. And Ronnie said, babies, babies, babies. They're gone, Christopher said. And Christopher and Shanann took everything out on the... He said they're gone, and Shanann took everything out on the girls because of him. And then Chris told Ronnie that he didn't know how unstable Shanann was, and Ronnie replied, well, Cindy believed she was an unstable narcissist bipolar. And that is exactly what Shanann called Cindy to her friend in a text message about right after Nutgate. So the feelings were mutual, and I just can't believe that they just found out that she is dead and that the girls are dead, and Ronnie could literally call her names afterwards. After finding out, it's not like he called her these names while she was missing. He knows she's dead and she's never coming back, and he still calls her these bad names. When Shanann called Cindy that, they were in the heat of an argument. They had confrontation. She felt like she was protecting her child. And so for this man to say this about this dead woman, it says a lot about the Watts family. And I'm so sorry if you are Team Watts, or you are on Watts Island, or you are a Watt bot, but no. There is no justification for any of this. Okay? And we don't know that Chris killed the girls when he said he did. For all we know, someone reported back to him that there was a YouTuber out there saying the girls were alive, and he decided to run with it. So we do not know. We don't know what's being pumped in his head and what's being pumped out to us afterwards. See you guys in a few.